Let me show you how easy it is to paint this beautiful mountain stream scene using acrylic paints. Hi there, my name is Kim. I'm an artist, and today I'm going to show you how absolutely anyone can create a beautiful acrylic painting in just a handful of simple steps. With that, let's jump right into the tutorial. Let's start by painting the background. I've added dark purple, light purple, and pink with a bit of white in it to the top 2/3 of my canvas. And I'm going to be using a large flat brush, and I'm going to blend those three out to create a beautiful gradient. And once we're finished with the top 2/3, we're going to paint in the bottom 1/3 with solid black. I'm really excited to paint this with you all. I've been reading the series A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is really popular right now, I know. But my friend got me into it, and I just fell in love with the second book in the series and the beautiful city and festival it described. And so this is my tribute to that series. If you recognize the festival or the city, leave me a note in the comments and let me know what you think. Okay, so this is the final part of the background. The stars are really important to the scene, and so I'm using some white paint and a large bristle brush here, and I'm just dabbing on a little bit of paint and then using a flicking motion so I can add stars around the top 2/3 of the painting. If this is your first time using this technique, just take it slow and use only a little bit of paint to start and slowly build it up as you go. For our next step, we're going to paint in the mountains. So I've added some cool blue as well as black here, and I'm going to mix those two colors together because I want the mountains to start off dark and then fade slowly in the background and lighten as they do. So I'm going to outline the first two mountains here that I want to be the largest and then fill them in with this dark blue. And then I'm going to slowly add the additional mountains fading into the background and lighten them with each step. Alright, and now that our mountains are done, you may notice that I had a bit of streakiness with my paint. This is just because I'm using paint from the dollar store, so it's not very thick or opaque. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a second layer over top, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So feel free to follow this as well if you're running into the same issue. For the next step, I want to add a stream coming down from the mountains below. And so I'm going to use that same medium pointed brush, and I'm going to use white to try to outline where I want the river to go. So this is just going to be a visual guide for me to figure out where I want to place it. And then I'm just going to gradually add white and thicken up the stream. This will also be helpful for when we add in color because it's going to be difficult to see colors if we add them, the pink, the purples, on the black directly, and so the white will help them stand out a little bit more in the long run. Next, we're going to add in some color, and so I've decided to add a bit of blue here at the beginning of the stream because I wanted to show that it's reflecting the mountains and the sky behind it. So I'm going to add a bit of blue to show the reflection of the mountain, and then I'm going to transition into the same pink, purple, and dark purple that I used for the sky. So I'm going to do that in a very similar way to the way I did the sky. I'm going to start off with the pink, and then I'm just going to gently blend in the light purple, and then finally the dark purple. So take your time with this and make sure you have a generous overlap between colors so you can blend them in together nicely. All right, so you'll have to forgive me, but at this point I decided I wanted to actually lighten up the earlier reflection I did of the mountain. So sometimes I take a step back from the painting and I look at it and I feel like something is just a little bit off. And what I decided was that I wanted the beginning to be a little bit lighter, and then I wanted to add in that darker shadow to reflect that there's two mountains there. So we're getting into the smaller details portion of the painting. I'm going to use black and that same medium pointed brush, or you can use a smaller one if that's easier for you. And I'm just going to add some silhouettes of trees that are lining the mountain. So I apologize, this is a little bit difficult to see just because the black paint is wet right now, and so it's a little bit reflective. But what I'm doing is I'm just adding these tiny little trees all along the forest line where the plains meet the mountains, just to soften that gradation and also add a bit of visual interest. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then while I have that same brush and paint, I'm going to also add a few grass details down below along the stream. Okay, and now it's time for my favorite part. We're going to paint in the moon and stars. And so I'm going to show you a kind of fun way to paint the moon that I really enjoy, and it's also very beginner friendly and forgiving. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use black, and I'm going to paint the outline of the full moon. Feel free to use a stencil for this if that's easier for you. And then I'm going to use white, and I'm going to cover up that black shape entirely before moving on to the next step. Okay, so as soon as your moon is completely covered and that paint is still wet, you're actually going to take your finger and you're going to start dabbing it. So what this is going to do is it's going to unevenly pull up little bits of white paint so you can start getting glimpses of the black below. This is going to add in some cool texture and variation to your moon, so it'll look like the surface of the moon where it's imperfect. There's some craters, and I'm actually even going to dip my finger very lightly into the black and just dab it right on the surface of the canvas as well. So I apologize if this is a bit difficult to see. I'll record a short in the next few days and I'll link it as a card above as well, just so you can see a better tutorial of how I do this. But it's one of the easiest ways to make a moon and make it look good. All right, with that, we're on to the stars. I have a tiny little pointed brush here that I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do is just dip into the white, and I really want to exaggerate some of the stars. So I'm going to take a few of the original dabs I had made in the beginning, and I'm just going to emphasize them and make them twinkle a little bit, not only in the sky, but also down below in the river as well. So here we are adding stars into the river below as well. I'm not worrying too much about copying exactly what's happening into the sky because the water will distort a lot of that reflection. So I'm just going ahead and adding some stars to mimic what we have above. And I also am going to add some ripple effects so we can show the reflection of the moon. So I'm going to concentrate that kind of below where the moon would be if we were looking from our point of view, just to add that kind of effect that it's rippling off of the water and you can see a bit of the reflection. All right, you're doing great. We're on to our final touches. So I'm using that same brush and the white, and I'm just gonna add a few final details to the stream. And so I want it to appear a little bit more 3D and a little bit more dynamic, like the water is moving. And so what I'm doing is I'm just lightly lining some sections of the river just to show the flow of the current. Okay, and with that, we're on our final step. I'm using that same medium pointed brush from earlier, and I'm just mixing some white as well as some of the blue we used for the mountains, and I'm just adding some final details to the mountaintops just to show where the snow is and it's reflecting off the moonlight. If you had fun painting this beautiful mountain scene together, then you're gonna love this next art tutorial I have for you on how to paint the city sunset. So click to watch, and I'll see you there.